Alright chums, how's it going? George here at Kilohearts. Are we all filled with the joy and cheer of the season? If not, you're about to be, because I'm going to spend a little bit of time making some Christmassy or wintry presets in Phaseplant. You'll be able to get these presets and more for free as our little Christmas gift to you from Kilohearts.com, so come pay us a visit. We actually asked our community on Discord to contribute their Christmas presets and content as well, and if you're not a part of the Discord server, you can go and sign up right away. There's a link down somewhere below this video, and you can go and be a part of things in the new year. We'd love to have you. So why not, let's just dive right in and begin. I'm going to start by making some classic jingly sleigh bells. The crucial factors here are a sort of inharmonic tinkly sound and a little cluster of different sounds, because there's multiple bells on a ring of sleigh bells. I'm going to do some ring modulation to make them sound as tinkly as possible. We'll see how that goes. And then I'm going to just create an LFO that plays them on the beats. So let's start there, in fact, with the LFO editor. We're going to use a very simple sort of diagram. So there we are. That's just 4 simple little somethings, and I'm going to save that. So now if we tie that to the gain on the output module, we probably only want to go up to about 65% volume, but when I press a key, we get a repeated noise. Now the tempo of that is entirely up to you. Let's sync it to our DAW tempo, and I think that ought to just about do it. So what I need to do now is create some sounds that are actually a little bit jingly and bell-like. Duplicate this group. By the way, your job as the viewer of this video is to comment telling me all the stupid things I've done that you would have done differently to make this easier and more efficient. In lanes 2 and 3, I'm going to delay the resulting sound very slightly. So this one by like 10 milliseconds and this one by, let's say, 15. Or why not 20? Let's keep it all kind of evenly spaced. So now if I press a key, we hear 3. The next thing I want to do is make them jingly. So I'm going to use the ring modulators on each of these lanes to make that happen, using sine oscillator and screwing with the frequency until I've got something that's a bit like what I want. Okay, and there's a moment there where that metallic tinkle is overcoming the sine coming through. So that's sufficiently jingly, I would say. And now if I copy those over, all I want to do really is play a bit with the settings of each of these to vary them very slightly against one another. Lovely. Now all 3 together. That's pretty nasty. Oh, because I'm not sending them all straight to the master. That's better. These have all got to go to the master, obviously, George. So now I think what we're going to do is just duplicate and make more voices. So I'm going to add an ensemble to each of these lanes with 6 voices and random motion. I'll do a little bit of tweaking. Great, and that also brings a bit of motion into these so that we can hear a reasonably high degree of jingliness. And actually, I now think that the delays are too long. Sometimes you just got to tweak until you're happy. I've just accidentally deleted that delay, so I'm going to undo. It's a nice feature of Phaseplant, isn't it? Undo. Now, to be honest, I'm going to leave it right there. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's close up these groups. Let's name them Bell 1, Bell 2, and Bell 3. Simplicity is not a bad thing. There we go. So that's a time-syncable Jingly Bell patch. Let's name it. Good. Save. And before we call this finished, let's add a couple of macros. I want one which kind of makes it sloppier. So let's call that loose. And what we're going to apply it to is these delays. So we can make them spread out in time a little bit. That's got to over-exaggerate it. Good. So that's tight and loose, fine. Let's also add a low cut. We're going to need to do that over on the effects lanes individually because of the way I've set this patch up. But if we change the cutoff frequency, we can really thin these things out. So going from there, let's increase so that we go up to basically gone. Nice. And now let's copy that over so that all 3 lanes now have the option of getting significantly thinned out. Let's call it high pass just to be grown up. And I've just realized I've been playing this the whole time on A, but it does seem to sound all right across the keyboard. So there are a variety of tonalities available there, so that's nice. Great, I'm going to save that and call that good to go because we've got a lot of other sounds to get to. So the next thing on my list, sticking with bells, I'm just going to go to the initialized patch here. The next thing is kind of church bells or tubular bells. And after a bit of research and doing a bunch of really dreadful sounds, I've found that the best way to do this is probably through additive synthesis, stacking lots of signs on top of themselves and making my own overtone spectrum. So let's start with a sine wave. And I'm essentially going to make this sound in 3 parts. So I'm going to start with a fundamental tone, which will be obviously the main audible pitch of this note. It's going to be reasonably low and strong. We're going to have a fairly slow attack on this because we're going to get the attack transient elsewhere, and we'll lose the sustain altogether, and we'll set identical times for the decay and the release so that we will be able to get the exact same effect whether we hold the key down or not. And that will give us something like this. Okay, now the second part of this sound that I'm going to make is going to be the overtone stuff. So let's call that, yes, overtones. And that is going to be a series of pitched sine waves that stack on top of that fundamental. So let's start with the second harmonic, and we'll create, I think, probably 6 of these at increasing harmonics. And then just to create a little bit more life, I'm going to make the frequency shift up ever so slightly with each one, so we get a imperfect overtone spectrum. It's a little bit shimmery. Now if we add the fundamental, it begins to sound a little bit bell-like. Let's now experiment a bit with spreading out these harmonics some. So I'm actually going to take this up to an odd high number like 13 and then bring them down oddly from the top. So that's 13, 11, 9, and then let's make this 6 and this 4. And now obviously we've got a completely different overtone spectrum, but it's a little bit more interesting, and we can tailor this to create all kinds of different bell sounds. And I've no idea, to be honest, whether any of this is, you know, physically accurate. I think it's almost certainly not, but it is quite good fun. And what happens if we have that lower half harmonic, that 0.5, as well as the 1? Gets a little bit muddy, but let's just take the volume of that. Yeah, I kind of like that. It kind of gives it body, doesn't it? Now I think the thing that's really going to sell it is the kind of clapper or beta sound. So let's do one more group here. Let's call it clapper. And we're essentially going to do filtered noise here with just a nice short attack. The cutoff can be quite nice and low, and we can actually use the note information, the MIDI note coming in, to budge that around a bit. Maybe a bit more than that. Let's hear it in context. Okay, so now we have a sound where there are three important elements working together. And without any one of them, it would all sound a bit weird. To make these things sound distant, like they're floating across a valley from a beautiful tower in the distance, I will use a combination of filtering and reverb. And I'm going to do all of this in Snap Heap. So on these two parallel tracks, I'm going to filter one of them. Okay, and those can just come in to increase the distance by losing some of the spectrum as it flows through the air. The other thing we want to do is add a reverb. And of course the dampen here does a little bit of time sensitive filtering for us as well. The higher frequencies decay more quickly than the low frequencies. Okay, and now we're going to create macros within Snap Heap that allow us from the phase plant interface to change the distance here. Great, let's make it extreme at the extremes, otherwise what's the point? And just a nice tidy bit of work with that reverb there. And then that macro just ties nicely to the macros in phase plant, so we can get that going from here. Oh, now I remember there was just one more thing that I wanted to do with this, which is have a little tiny bit of sort of wobbly stuff with an LFO on that fundamental. So just really small amounts, but I want to vary the gain coming out of the main output here. And possibly the phase of one of these, I don't know. Cool, and that seems like a candidate for another macro, so let's call that wobbly, and we'll adjust the scope of that LFO in order to make that happen, so that when we open that up, cool, relatively satisfied with that. Let's move along. I want to try a patch that I'm calling Little Drummer Boy, and I'm not exactly sure what it is yet, but it definitely involves a snare drum. So what we're going to do to begin with is create a snare. Now the simplest way to create a snare is just to shape some noise. So let's start with that. Okay, so obviously that's unbelievably basic. The next level of complexity is probably to filter that somewhat. So I want to do several filters, a couple of which recreate the kind of modes of vibration. So a couple of spaced dead spots will create the illusion of a real physical instrument. In that kind of mid-range. So that's our kind of snarey overtone noise thing. Let's call that noise. Something else we can do to make this a little bit more real is to give the drum itself some vibration modes, and that means creating a couple of sine waves. To be honest, I don't think it matters hugely where these vibrate, but they need to be two slightly different modes. I want to do some hard clipping distortion on this, just to make it snap some. I'm not sure I like the way those two sines are pitched. Introducing inharmonicity is one of my major problems. I'm going to need to read more about this. But yeah, that kind of works. I'll also add a reverb just to make it feel like it's in a real space. Everything sort of sounds artificial until you give it a space to live in. Cool. That'll do. I wonder if we can make a roll using a delay, or whether it's just going to be hideous. I really don't know, so let's try it. I think we want a nice low mix and an almost, well, yeah, an infinite feedback pretty much. And then, oh, that's horrible. That's absolutely dreadful. So a slightly longer time. Yeah. Interesting. That's so rubbish. I like it. Let's do a flam as well. Christmassy. Okay, cool. I recognise that this is completely unplayable, and I do sort of apologise for that. But on the other hand, it's fun. Okay, very silly. Okay, let's move forward with 2 or 3 nice quick ones. I want to make a couple of just generally chilly pads, and I'm going to use some of that granular sample stuff that I was talking about in the video the other day. Oh, hello, tubular bells. Bear in mind, all that stuff I did earlier on, there's a lot of nice similar sounding or better sounding stuff in the sample library. I quite fancy doing something with this that's a bit like Frozen Lakey. So let's begin by just filtering the crap out of that. I want something a little bit windy. Random, nice and slow, nice and smooth. And that's just going to move the cut off slightly, and it's going to move the cue. Yep, so that's my sort of bed, my wind noise, my underlay. There's a joke about carpet layers and underlay and Spanish carpet layer. I can't remember, my dad used to tell it. It's probably best that I don't remember, isn't it? And now let's use that same sample for some tonal stuff. So duplicate the group, make a loop that's really, really, really short, like so short that it oscillates. I'm going to pitch it way up, and then I'm going to actually pitch that to a C, which is somewhere like that. That's my C. And then I'm going to make these into, instead of sustained sounds, I'm going to make an envelope that plinks and plonks them. So it's going to be a nice long decaying thing, 2 seconds. Let's do a big slopey fall off. Oh, and I'll tell you what, I need the wind noise to decay slowly as well then, don't I? I need like a 3-second release. Wait a minute, is that a C? Oh, I'm a little flat, see? That's close enough, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to use the distortion to give us some overtones. Lovely. And what if we have some unison? Well, that is ever so wintry. I think we also need the note input to have some effect on the cutoff frequency because we're losing the higher frequencies. And actually, I wonder whether it wouldn't be smart to negatively affect the cutoff frequency of the wind. Yeah, I also just want a soft, warm analog pad layer. So I'm going to do that with an analog generator. I'm going to use a triangle wave or two, slightly detuned, and we'll filter it like mad. That's lovely. So let's play with the balance in the macros first of all. So let's make macro 1 warm. That's a little too much, but that's the idea. Let's just make this unison a little bit more optional. Twinkles. Very nice. Let's give it an evocative name. Crystal Lake. Cool. And of course, some effects would not go amiss. What would a pad be without a lovely long reverb? Great, and obviously that's a candidate for another macro. Again, the phaser thing strikes me as quite possible. Okay, now let's move on. I'm sort of blending two ideas here, but I did also want to make a patch that was like that sort of cracking frozen lake thing. So I've already done Crystal Lake. Let's now do Frozen Lake. I feel like we want to start with the cracks. And I think there will be some filtered noise involved. Yeah, something like that. And I think we also, let's duplicate this output again, because I think we want a really low level rumble to be constant, but we also want a lovely crack. Very nice. I think we also want the note to have an effect on the cutoff, don't we? Maybe we don't need polyphony here. And I actually reckon there's cause to use the sampler here, and we'll totally misuse this campfire thing. And that will give us a sense of distinct unease, I reckon. And then I just want a single, almost inaudible note in there so that this can actually be played. And I'm going to do something wacky with the pitch of the, or the, rather the tuning of the unison voices. What if we increase the number of voices? Yeah, and how about if the spread applies by that envelope also? That's much more interesting. Cool. Now, I've no idea what you're going to use that for, but it's just a bit of fun. Again, I feel as if some effects are warranted. I want more width out of this. That's fun. And I do certainly feel like a subtle delay is warranted, but I don't know exactly how. I want a very low mix, I think, and a very long time. But I also want it to be somewhat randomized. And unless I actually randomize the delay time, I don't really know how to do that. Let's open up Snap Heap and do a double delay and see if that amuses us. So we'll do parallel tracks here and put one delay in here with one long time and one here with a different long time. So if we press key now, yeah, that's a certain something, but I don't want it to be a necessary feature of the sound, right? So let's also just make the delay at all be a macro here. It feels quite wintry, but as I say, I have no idea what that would be useful for. I quite like it. Wacky.